Yo, what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. Today's video, we're going to be doing a leveling and econ guide for set 4 and set 4.5. The reason why we're putting those both together is because this guide is going to be based on the leveling, econ, and the chosen system that is not going to be different from set 4 or set 4.5. So it's going to be applicable in both. The goal of this video is to give you the information to answer those why questions and talk about some play styles, why you do them, and what you should be thinking about in the early game when you're making your decision. So the goal of this video is to give you the tools to make better decisions when you're playing. If you're looking for a video that's do this in this situation every time, or if you're playing sharpshooters, you need to do this, or this is the only way to play the game, that is not what this video is. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm going to be giving you the information as to why. And so I hope you guys enjoy. So with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. All right, first things first, we're gonna talk about these tables that I made here. This just give you background information. So when I talk about the actual play styles down here, it'll make a little bit more sense. Sorry if you're a visual learner and this is gonna be difficult for you. I'm sorry about that, but we're really going to have to do a deep dive in some of the numbers and just really talk about a lot of stuff in order for this to best come out. It's probably gonna be a long video, but you know, whatever. It has to be a long video if we're gonna talk about this stuff. So the rolling odds is pretty self-explanatory. This is a base rolling odds that you're going to have in your game. We're not really gonna talk about chosen rolling odds in this game, but here's some chosen stuff on the side right there. This is gonna be the combat order, so the standard combat order that you have every game, the PvE, 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 into PvP, and then your carousel, PvP, Krugs, and then we actually put the name of the rounds right here because they're going to be pretty relevant when talking about the play style. Sorry, it's condensed down here. Just, you know, moving it down there for formatting. You feel me? All right. And this is where we're going to be doing the bulk of our talking. We're going to talk about 4 different play styles that you can think about just about every game. Play styles are obviously very meta dependent, especially early game play styles are very meta dependent. But these are 4 things. These are just 4 play styles that I'm putting right here that you can think about just about every game. And again, depending on the meta, some play styles are much stronger than other ones that you should try to do most games. But I'm more of the opinion that you should think about these play styles, and they're situationally strong, even if the meta is a certain way. Even in like 4-1 roll down rodeo meta, there's a situation where you econ, but most of the time you don't. So just know that these are the 4 play styles that I really think about every game, and I think about doing some of these things. Obviously, there's more ways to play. But we're just going to talk about these 4, or this video will be an hour long. And we're not going to talk about very niche situations like re-rolling. We might touch on it a tiny bit, like playing re-roll styles. But that's not really the goal of the video. Goal of the video is to give you general information that you can think about every single game. Okay, so with that out of the way, we have all of our background information. Let's actually start talking about the play styles. So we're just going to be using these play styles as an example on what information, or on an example of what you should do given these situations, because you're going to run into each 4 of these situations if you play enough TFT. Okay, so let's talk about aggressive win streaking. So it's exactly how it sounds. You play very aggressive in the early game. So the example is you get a strong chosen. Let's say at the time of me making this video, if you get a Vayne sharpshooter chosen, that's a very strong early game chosen. You can get that at level 3, level 2, all that good stuff. So that's a very aggressive chosen. And you're playing to win streak, so you're playing to level early. The reason why I say Vayne chosen at the time of making this video, if you have a Vayne chosen, it's very easy to get a Nidalee and a Teemo, then item stack your Vayne and Teemo, very good item holders for late game comps. So that's why it's a very standard, very strong early game comp. So that's a situation you want to do that, is if you get a very aggressive, strong chosen that you know that you can win a lot of rounds. So the benefits of playing this playstyle is you're going to have the highest health of any of the 4 playstyles that you could have chosen that game. You have very high health. You should be able to recover your econ by mid-game. And you have increased rolling odds because you're going to be playing a little bit more aggressively with your leveling. We'll talk about leveling when you're playing an aggressive comp in just a second. The downside, of course, is that you ruin your early game econ. And you have a possibility of having a very weak mid-game, because if you're not actually going to win streak the entire time all the way to Krugs, there's a chance you lose one of those rounds because someone else is also trying to do the same thing. It's very common. And so if you're the one who ends up losing the round right before Krugs, your econ's going to take a pretty significant hit that you were hoping to get, but the game's not ruined. It just means that you're going to have less gold to work with in mid game. So when other people start to catch up to the way you were playing, you might lose a lot of health in mid game. But really, the benefit of this comp is you're going to be very strong early. You're going to have better rolling odds, so maybe you can like high roll like a Jhin or an Ashe or Warwick, something like that. Maybe you can high roll something like that. And you just realized saying those names, those champs aren't going to be in 405, but you get what I mean. A 4-cost carry. You can high roll a 4-cost carry, slot that in your comp, and then your comp's really strong. But you run the gambit that you're not going to have money in the mid game. But the whole idea is you're trying to get to your late game comp, and you just chose to invest more in your early game, and you might lack a little bit in mid game if you start to lose. If you're high rolling this and you're playing very aggressive and you're win streaking, like you have very strong chosen, you get an early 2-cost carry to 2-star, you have good items, then you can fly through mid game by having an early mid game comp and get to that late game with a lot of health and a lot of money. Obviously, this is best case scenario. And so let's talk about the situation you want to do this. So we talked a little bit about it just a second ago, but let's say you get a sharpshooter chosen, something like that. At the time of me making this video, that's a very strong chosen to have in the early game. So you put together this early game comp, you slam items as soon as you get them that are going to be applicable for your late game builds. So you slam items as soon as you get them, and you play aggressive with your leveling. So let's talk about when do you level whenever you're playing this way. So if you're playing this way, let's say you get like a Vayne chosen, something like that on second PvE round. Well, you can elect to pre-level so that you have an increased chance of hitting, let's say you want to play Vanguards because you want to get that Dusk in right there. And so you want to get your 2-cost front line and your other backline carries. So you want to pre-level so you can hit, Teemo and Jinx, which at the time we make this video are the sharpshooters you add to that comp. So you could have Teemo, Jinx, Vayne, and 2 Vanguards once you hit level 5. And that's a really strong comp. That's a mid-game comp that you already have before first carousel. It's possible for you to have that. Or right after first carousel, it's possible for you to have that. And so let's talk about where you level. So you'd want to do a pre-level round here on the 3rd PvE round so that you can increase your rolling odds for your completed comp. And obviously we're talking about Vayne in this situation and a sharpshooter comp. We're just using an example. Don't get held up too much on the comps. So you pre-level so you can get a strong front line to accompany your backline chosen. And then you do the next 2 PvP rounds and you pre-level once again for those same things, for getting your Jinx, getting your Teemo, getting your Thresh. So you just want to get to level 5 as quick as possible so you can start getting those. And maybe at this level, you can start to high roll like a Jhin or something, or your 4-cost sharpshooter. So you can start high rolling those things to add to your comp. So remember, don't get held up on the comps, but just if you know it's a strong early game chosen, you can play this way and be very aggressive with your money. And then after this round, after carousel, you want to try to make 10 gold here most of the time, but it's not, you don't have to if you know you're going to win streak. Because the whole idea of playing this way is after Krugs, you're going to start econing the best you can. Because you're going to try to recover your econ from early game, and hopefully you can do that by win streaking, and all this investment you made in your early game, you can win streak without spending more gold on stage 3. So that's the whole idea with that playstyle. So just to recap, this is definitely the strongest way to play the game if you're given the situation, but this is a high roll way to play the game. So you are high rolling whenever you're doing this most of the time. This is not going to be applicable every single game because there's a lot of luck involved in doing this. But a situation you do want to do this is if you get that strong chosen for free. So if you get that strong chosen for free, and you obviously run the risk of somebody else just having a slightly stronger comp than you. If they have a slightly stronger comp than you, then worst case scenario, you're just going to have a little bit of a weaker mid game because you're going to have to spend that entire mid game trying to make 10 gold at every opportunity so that you can get to that level 7, level 8 build that you're looking for to carry your late game. So that is the risk. Anyways, I hope that wasn't too confusing. So let's talk about playstyle number 2. So this is aggressive, strong board. So let's just talk through this and then I'll talk about what these mean. So aggressive, strong board. So for example of this is like just accepting your first chosen and then pre-leveling, just like we talked about just a second ago, but we'll go and look at that table. So it's taking your first chosen, pre-leveling, and just fitting things around it that complement it. So for example, if you have a frontline chosen like at the time of me making this video, you have like a Wukong, Vanguard, Chosen. You just take your very first one you see and you pre-level. Now you accompany it with some sharpshooters, which is going to be a pretty standard, strong, like pretty decently strong early game comp, but it's probably not strong enough to win streak all the way to Krugs, but it's going to save you a lot of health. So the benefit of this is you have high health. Sometimes you can get a mid-game comp by the second case scenario, which we'll talk about. And then you increase your rolling odds. So you increase your rolling odds for just luckily getting a 4-cost carry that you can just high roll at level 5. Whereas if you don't play strongest board and play very aggressive, you don't have an opportunity to get those because you are not leveling in order to get the basically first dibs on 4-cost carries that you can get at level 5. So the other scenario that you could do this is you could hold out for a high roll Chosen. And so this is where a lot of the risk is going to be involved. So the risk of doing this is it's the most RNG way to play the game. You ruin your econ and you could have a losing build for early and mid game if you mess this up. And so this is the easiest way to ruin your game. But this is a way to play. So the most infamous time in recent memory that you would play this way, aggressive, strong board, would be in the 4-1 roll down rodeo. So if you played during that meta, which was basically the middle part of set 4, if you played in that meta, you would basically do this almost every single game because everyone played strongest board. Because you didn't have to get to level 8, you only had to get to level 7, and getting to level 7 is not that hard. And you just want to have the most health to get to level 7. So that was a time when this type of playing was very prevalent. But you can still play like this all the time. But it is the most RNG way to play the game. And I almost didn't even add this onto my playstyle list, but I just wanted to put here because some people do like to play this way. Because there's another way that you can do this is by holding out for a high roll Chosen. So what I mean by that is instead of taking your first Chosen and just trying to have a really strong board, you could just put out the strongest board you have with what units you have and just pre-level or just level as quick as possible. So it'd be those same pre-level rounds, like pre-level 3rd PvE and pre-level here. And you do not accept a Chosen unless it is a really, really strong Chosen. So at the time of me making this video, if you get a Teemo Chosen, you have a free get to level 8 board, right? Or you get like a Pike Chosen. That's a very strong mid-game Chosen. Maybe a Jarvan Chosen. These are all at the time of making this video, of course. But you just get a very strong 2-cost Chosen, or maybe you high roll a Kindred Chosen or something like that. So you're really holding out for that, but you run a big risk of losing early game, tanking your econ, and you have no econ to find a mid-game comp. And so if you play that way, and I kind of group these two together because they're kind of the same philosophy, is you just play aggressive, but you're not worried about win streaking yet. You're just trying to get the strongest board you can and just high roll some shit. You run a big risk of doing this, big risk of losing early game and not having money for mid game, which basically dooms your mid game, and you're just hoping for like a 2-star Kindred or a 2-star Teemo or something like that. So this is the most RNG way to play. I hardly ever recommend people play like this. And this is the most meta-dependent way to play. But there are certain situations where you might want to play this way. And then like a situation where you could play this way is if you get like a really high gold start and you can elect to play aggressive with that gold instead of econing it and get to a really fast level 5 and just hope that your rolling odds will give you a strong board. But every time you do that, you do run the risk of just not hitting. And it's really common to just not hit. I typically don't recommend this play style, but if you wanted to do this play style, sometimes a meta will call for playing this way, and that's fine. But if the meta does not call for playing this way, typically don't recommend playing this way. But if you want to, it's basically the same way as aggressive win streak. You're just going to have less. You're just going to have less money, and you're kind of rolling the dice a little bit more. So you do the same thing you'd pre-level at the pre-level round, and you'd pre-level again at PvP right before carousel. And hopefully after carousel in these next 2 PvP rounds or Krugs, you hit a very strong comp just by rolling odds, because you're not going to have any money to roll. So you're rolling the gambit of hoping that on this round you hit a really strong chosen like a Pike or a Teemo, or you just hit a really strong board, or you get early fortune, something like that. And then if you don't hit on either of these 2 rounds or either of these 3 rounds, you're hoping on these next 3 rounds you hit, because if you do not, you will be at 70 or 65 HP and you won't have any money either. And so it can feel really doomed because, but if you want to roll the dice, you want to play that way because 50% of the time you will hit those things and you'll be crazy strong and you basically have a free top 4. So it's really a coin flippy play style, but I don't typically recommend to play this game unless the meta really calls for playing it this way. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is active losing. This is I don't always play this way or anything like that, but for the most part, this is my preferred way to play the game. A lot of set 4 has been my preferred way to play the game because it has a lot of strengths and has like a limited amount of risk. Like the strengths outweigh the list, I think, but you don't have to play this way. So aggressive losing. So an example of aggressive losing would be you don't take a chosen, but you play strongest board and you econ. So you're econing, but you're playing the strongest board. Like let's say you don't take a chosen, but you have a 2-star vein. I'm just going to keep using sharpshooters as an example because they're strong early at the moment. So let's say you just have a 2-star vein, you have 2 sharpshooters, and you have like a thresh. You just hit those units, and you just stay at level 3 as long as you can, econing, making 10 gold at every opportunity. So you make 10 gold, but you're probably going to lose most of your rounds. Maybe you'll win a couple of them. So you're probably going to be like lose, and win against some of the people who are playing like weak boards as well. And then another example is you take a weak chosen and intentionally run kind of a weak board. Not really intentionally run, but it's just, you're trying to make 10 gold. So if 2-starring a backliner makes you lose 10 gold, sometimes you just don't do it. Like let's say you have like a chosen Wukong, right? You have a chosen Vanguard. Then you just, and you can make 10 gold this turn, but in order to make 10 gold, you can't 2-star one of your backliners, then you just elect not to make gold. So the entire way of playing this way is essentially you're trying to make econ, but you're also not willing to take like an 8 health loss early game. You're not willing to take a 4-unit loss if you can help it. So you're trying to reserve some of your health. You're willing to lose health, but you're not willing to lose super hard. So you're kind of like playing both worlds of I'm making 10 gold and I'm not losing 8 health every turn. And so the benefits of this is you have high econ, you have carousel prio, so you'll unlock either first or second most of the time when you play this way, and you'll get the mid game quicker than people playing more aggressive. And we'll talk about how you do that in just a second. The risk is you have low health, so you're gonna have lower health than the people playing aggressive. So early game, you might lose 25 HP before Krugs. Worst case scenario, you lose 30 before Krugs. So you have low health, and there's a chance you just don't hit your mid game comp. It's a low chance, but sometimes your game just gets doomed because you lose early and you just get really, really, really unlucky mid game. And so you run the gambit of having of just like your game being doomed because you run this weak early game and then you have all this money to make a strong mid game comp and it just never comes. That happens sometimes, but it's only going to be like 10% of your games that you play like this, maybe less. So that's why a lot of players are scared to play this way, and most people play more aggressive, especially in lower elos. People will play a lot more aggressive because they're so scared of losing their HP and then not being able to put their comps together. Another reason why, worse players will play this way is because they don't know how to make a lot of mid-game comps. So I do think this is a little bit more difficult way to play and is a little bit more active on a little bit more brain involved than a couple other ways to play. But you do run a gambit of this. So let's talk about how you do this. So essentially, you're never going to be pre-leveling most of the time, unless you just have an insane amount of gold and you can pre-level a little bit. But essentially, you're trying to make 10 gold, but you're also trying to not lose miserably because you're going to get to the part where you're going to roll for a mid game just a little bit later than if you're actually lose streaking. So the plan for this is to not lose streak. You're not trying to lose streak. You're just trying to make 10 gold. And if you can lose streak, that's cool. But you're not going to be that guy who's, every single round selling half of his board because you're scared you're going to fight the guy who's slightly weaker than you. You're not doing that. You're just trying to make 10 gold. You're just trying to econ. But you're not trying to open fort or anything like that. So essentially, you won't do these pre-level rounds. You'll play the game without leveling like normal. And so you're going to try to make 10 gold as early as you can. But remember, we're not going to make our comp just crazy weak to make 10 gold. It's not what we're trying to do. Hopefully by this round, you're making 10 gold. And sometimes if you got a big gold start, like an 8 gold start or a 12 gold start, you high roll a 12 gold start, you can make 20 gold by this round or this round. And if you make 20 gold by this round, you're in a really good spot. If you make 20 gold by this round and you're not taking 4 unit, 3 unit losses, you're taking like 2 unit losses, 1 unit losses, then this is best case scenario. If you get to here and you're like, 90 health, like that is best case scenario. Okay, and then after here, we're still not gonna level. We're gonna go to Krugs without leveling. And then the time in which we'll have 50 gold, enough gold to roll at level 6 is typically when you play this way is going to be at 3-3. Sometimes you can get to 3-1 if you high roll like a 12 gold start. But essentially you want to get to 3-3 with 70 health. This is just numbers that I came up with for what I think about in the game. You can pick your own spot where you're comfortable. But when you're playing active losing, you can typically get to 3-3 with 70 health, and you can level to 6 with having at least like 40 gold to roll with. You can usually get to that every single game if you're making about 10 gold at about this round right here. So by the time you get to 3-3, if you're at 70 health, this is a good level 6 rolling spot. Sometimes you can go to 3-4 if you have like 80 health. Like maybe everybody's playing a weak early game. And essentially what you're going to do here is you're going to level to 6. If you have a chosen, you're going to sell that chosen most of the time. Sometimes you could have a really stable chosen for your board. You'll sell that, and now you'll roll for a new board. And you're willing to roll all of your money because you econ very heavily. You're going to basically what you're doing is you're exchanging having a weak early game for having a strong mid game. Whereas these people who played an aggressive play style, they exchanged having a strong early game for having no money mid game. And so you have all the money mid game and you're going to spend it. So don't try to econ too much. Because if you try to econ too much, you will lose. You will lose the game. Sometimes you'll hit immediately and it's fine. But you should be willing to roll all of your gold to get a strong board. You want to be the strongest or second strongest player in the lobby after spending all this gold right here. Again, there's a small % chance you just don't hit. And if you're really bad at the game, I'm saying really bad at the game, but if you don't know how to make a lot of different comps for mid game, then this is going to be a very hard way to play the game because you have to know what to look for. And so if you just don't know what to look for, it's going to be very hard for you to play this way. But, I'm explaining this given that you have that knowledge. So you're going to roll all of your gold to get a strong comp, and you're going to be level 6, 10 gold, maybe right here. But you're going to have, like, let's say at the time of you playing this, let's say you have a Kindred chosen because you could totally get one here. You have a 2-star Kindred and this like Vanguard Mystics frontline already, like this crazy strong board. You're gonna have this board that can win streak, or at the very least be the second strongest in the lobby all the way until stage 5, all the way until everybody's going to level 8. And you may have spent a lot of gold here, but you're gonna recover that econ by being strong in the mid and very early late game. And basically the way you're doing this is you're doing the same thing that these aggressive people did. You're going to get the 8 at about the same time as these people. You just exchanged having a weak early game for having a strong mid game, whereas these people exchanged having a strong early game for having a weaker mid game. And typically when you play this playstyle, you'll have more health most of the time because mid game is more punishing than early game just by the nature of having more units, and the health loss per player is just more in the mid game. And if you're and I know what you might be thinking, well, when you play aggressive win streak, you win early and mid game. But that is not a repeatable way to play the game. That is very, very, very high roll. The reason why I like playing this way is it's very repeatable. You can do this just about every game if you want to, but sometimes you don't want to because you high roll an early game chosen that's very strong, so you wouldn't want to play that way. Anyways, that's what I call active losing. So The reason why I call it active is because you're actively trying to make a strong board all the time, but at the same time, you're also trying to make gold. Your first priority is to make gold, and your second priority is to save health. Okay, now the next thing we're talking about is passive lose streaking. So an example of this is a weak board with no chosen, or straight up open fort. So when you're playing passive lose streak, you're trying to be the weakest player in the game. I think this is the most involved way to play. Maybe active losing is slightly more involved, but this is probably the most involved way to play the game, because you're having to constantly look at other people's boards to see if other people are also trying to play weak boards, and you have to think about who you fight next, because you could be fighting the guy who has the aggressive win streak board, which is going to be 1 or 2 people in the lobby, and you want to try to put some units out there because you don't want to take a 5-unit loss in the early game, because that can happen, and that's 10 health gone. You know, that'll hurt. And so the benefits of doing this is you'll have the highest econ in the game, bar none, no doubt, because you are doing anything to make 10 gold. You'll have carousel prio, so you should be the last place player in the lobby, and you can get the mid game faster than anyone else in the game playing this way, unless there's another player playing the same way. But the risks obviously are low health, so you're gonna have extremely low health, and there's a chance you don't hit your mid game comp. Just a side note, and I'm not going to talk about this any more than this. This is typically how you play when you're playing like a 1-cost reroll build. So like at the time of making this video, Moonlights is a common 1-cost reroll build. Let's say you get an early Diana or Lysandra Chosen, something like that. Obviously, this is not applicable in 4.5, but reroll builds will be around in 4.5. Then this is typically how you play when you play a reroll build, because you'd roll at 4 and 5, and you roll very heavily to stabilize. So you exchange having this weak-ass early game for having a basically completed board mid-game. But that's all we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about more. That's a very niche scenario. We're going to talk about more typically. So you still run the gambit that you're going to lose all this health early game and you never stabilize mid-game. And that is a doomsday scenario. But again, that is uncommon, because if you have a lot of money to spend, you should hit something. A lot of people are scared to play this way. And depending on the meta, sometimes playing this way is very hard to do. Like if the meta is play aggressive strongest board, like in the 4-1 roll down rodeo, it was very difficult to play this way. And if you played this way, it was a little bit more risky, because you would have 50 health very fast. So it was hard to play this way. But other times playing this way is very good. And there's situations where you want to do this. Situation you want to do this is maybe you hit a 12 gold start, and you can elect, just like we said or up here, you can elect to spend your gold to have higher rolling odds, get a strong board, and have standard, like a typical econ level, while still having this aggressive board. Or you can elect to make 20 gold at the first PvP round, and you're going to have 50 gold level 6 so fast in the game. And so that would be a situation you want to do that. Another situation you want to do that, you just hit a bunch of garbage. You just hit so much garbage, and you had a decent gold start, and you can make 10 gold in the first PvP round. You're just like, well, I guess I'm lose streaking. You can elect to do that, or you can choose to try to do like active losing. But maybe you try to do, and another situation is you try to do active losing, but most of the players in the lobby are playing strongest board. Well, you can just kind of pivot that strategy just to play a more passive play style where you're trying to be the weakest player in the lobby, because you just see that everyone's playing aggressive. So you can just not accept a chosen and be slightly weaker than some of the weaker players, and you can actually just play a lose streak build that game. So those are situations where you could do that and where you want to do that. All right, how do you actually play this play style? So it's pretty simple. You make 10 gold at all costs. You basically make 10 gold at all costs. You can open fort. I know that's scary for a lot of people. You can choose to open fort and just lose a lot of HP, or if the lobby's playing a little bit more aggressive, you can throw some units out there and function, basically create your comp so that you know that you'll kill at least 1 unit whenever you fight. But you're going to lose health pretty fast. And so let's talk about what we're going to do here. So we're obviously not going to pre-level. We need to make 10 gold right here, no matter what. If you want to play this playstyle, you need to make 10 gold right here, no matter what. If you get a high roll gold start, you can make 10 gold at PvE round, which is insane. And then by this round, by the round before the second carousel or first carousel, depending on how you want to say it or how you view it, by the time you get to this round, you want to be making 20 gold. You really want to be making 20 gold. Sometimes you can be making 30 gold right there. And the goal of playing this way is that you can have about 70 health. Sometimes it's okay to have, this is the numbers I selected, by the way. It's okay to have 60 health here, because sometimes it'll be like that. The goal is to have 70 health or 65 health, something around there. Be level 6 and have about 40 gold to roll with. So you're 2 rounds ahead of the people who played the more active losing playstyle, which is where they probably did a win-loss while making 10 gold situation. So the obvious benefit to this is you can have a completed mid-game comp at 3-1. Essentially, yeah, you can have a 3-1 mid-game comp right here. And even the people playing aggressive, unless they are turbo high roll, they will be so much weaker than you these next 2 rounds. And so this can be very punishing to people playing more aggressive, because if they haven't fought you yet, they haven't fought you in a while, and then they fight you the next round and they haven't had a chance to fix their board, you're going to give them a huge loss and they lose their win streak and their econ is ruined. So that's why it's good. Like, you can really punish these 2 playstyles right here if you're playing passive losing or active losing as well. And the people who are playing more active losing, you're going to give them a tough loss where they otherwise would have not gotten a tough loss. So if they've already fought the aggressive players, they've been taking some tough losses, and then you're one of the passive players, one of the people lower than them in the lobby, and now you hit a strong board, you're going to be punishing them. So you'll even punish the active losing people by hitting your board 2 rounds earlier. So essentially, you're just playing the same way as the active losing person. You're just getting your mid-game comp earlier, and you're losing a lot harder early game. So again, to recap, the situations you'd play this playstyle is you just don't hit shit, and you made a decent amount of econ, and you know you're going to lose. You can just elect to do this, or you can elect to play a little bit more bit more aggressive to keep your health, and that'd be the active losing style. Or to play the passive way, you elect to just make 10 gold at all costs, and you have to look at every single person's board and say, I am weaker than every single person in this lobby. And you plan around that every single time. If there's another person trying to lose, you open fort. So that's when you would do that. Or maybe you make like 12 gold, you get a high roll 12 gold start, and you can make 20 gold at the first round. You like to do the same thing. You make 20 gold and you look at the lobby and say, I gotta be weaker than everyone else because I'm gonna be strong at 3-1. And so again, you're just exchanging by having a weak early game for having a super strong mid game. And so you'll have this really strong mid game, and you could have completed mid game comp at 3-1 that'll get you to level 8, or maybe you have like a mid game reroll build that will get you to 7, and you can reroll with your win streak money to 3-star your units, stuff like that. Okay, that was a long video. That's all we're gonna talk about today. Maybe I'll do an individual video on each of these play styles and talk about them a little bit more. If you would enjoy that, let me know in the comments below. Or if you want another type of video explaining other ways to play the game, or like a specific question about specific ways to play, just let me know in the comments below, and I'll consider making a video like that in the future. So anyways, that's gonna be it, guys. I stream, let me plug my stream real quick. I stream just about every day on twitch.tv/TrajanTFT. That's mostly what I do. Every now and then I'll make a video just when I have a topic I want to talk about, but maybe I'm trying to get into making a video like once a week. But I really enjoy streaming. That's the main thing that I do. So if you want to do that, I'll leave a link in the description below, and you can head over there and ask me questions live and stuff like that. And I do pretty educational streams, or I'll do some fun streams. You know, we get pretty hype over there. So anyways, that's gonna be it, guys. Thanks for coming by. Bye-bye. Hey, do. Bye-bye. Bye.